Joining us now, Lee Carter, president of Maslansky Partners, a communication strategy firm, and the author of Persuasion: Convincing Others When Facts Don't Seem to Matter. Good morning to you on this election day. How cautiously will you be watching the early results come in tonight?
I think the early results, we really have to be careful for all the reasons we just talked about. They can be skewed. Oftentimes, when you look at places like Florida, for example, the voting, it crosses a time zone. So you see early voting doesn't necessarily include the panhandle, which can make it and then end up looking more red. You also have the urban centers, as he described. And then, of course, there's different rules in different states about when you can count the early vote, when you can vote, count the mail-in ballots. And some states have mail-in ballots that can be, postmarked right up until today, but not received for up to 72 more hours. So there's a lot of question marks about what you see early in the day, and I caution people not to make too many decisions early as you're watching the returns come in.
One state that we'll be able to watch early, you mentioned Florida, but also Georgia. And this was a state, it's a swing state, but it's also a state where we saw record turnout for early voting, and we'll start to see those results first. How big of an indicator will Georgia be as we wait for the other swing states to come in?
Well, I think Georgia and North Carolina are two states that we have to watch. If Donald Trump doesn't win both of these states, he's going to have a very difficult path to victory. Georgia, we're going to know pretty quickly. They are they've changed some of the rules. They're going to be able to count very quickly. We're going to know, I think, tonight what's happening in Georgia. Polls close at 7 p.m. In 2022, during the midterms, we knew within 20 hours exactly what was happening there. And the thing that I think is really interesting about looking at Georgia is right now, Georgia early voting has about 10% more women voting than men. And that is a good sign for Harris. And a lot of folks are saying that they're expecting as many as 70% of people in Georgia to have voted early. And so it's all going to come out to how many people are going to turn out today. Are the tides going to shift? But right now, early signs in Georgia are looking pretty good for Kamala Harris. But again, I caution anyone to draw too many conclusions early in the day.
Right. We got to be careful. You have said recently that people have decided what they think about Donald Trump, and his numbers have been really strong, right? He knows what his base is and he speaks to that. But you say Kamala's numbers have sort of fluctuated. They've gone up and down. Why might that be, and how might that influence today's momentum?
So I think there's a couple of reasons why that's happened. I think we haven't had as long to get to know Kamala Harris as we've known Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been front and center for 9 years. Yes, Kamala Harris has been the vice president, but we don't really know what her leadership is going to be. Many voters' big question is, how is her candidacy going to be different than Joe Biden's? I'm not sure that she successfully made that case, but we did start to see that she started eking away at Trump's numbers, specifically on the economy. He had a 20-point lead at one point. Now he's only ahead on the economy by between 6 and 8 points on that. So she made some progress there. She's been able to tell her story. I also think, the abortion issue is one that's really, really big for her. And that's been coming around too. But we've seen, as people have gotten to know her, they like her more and less. She had a big surge for the first 2 weeks that she came out on the campaign. And then for the last, I'd say, 6 weeks, she struggled a little bit. She went up very negative. She went much more into the rhetoric around the threats to democracy than she had started by talking about freedom. The last week, we've seen her return to a more positive messaging strategy. I think that helps her as well. I think the negativity was overwhelming to people. I think everybody knows just how bad things were, and she had to differentiate herself.
Well, we'll know soon enough. Lee Carter, thanks for joining us on this busy election day. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.